My name is Abe Fuchs, and I'm running for State Assembly in Queens, covering Kew Garden Hills, Fresh Meadows, Flushing Proper, Bayside Hills, Auburndale, Oakland Gardens, and Little Neck. And I was about to address the Queens Village Republican Club tonight, but because of the hurricane, the storm Sandy, there were no lights there. And here I am, the owners of Palermo Pizzeria at 24849 Jericho Turnpike in Belrose were gracious enough to allow us to come here and to film. So I'm going to talk about my race and how it contrasts with my opponent. Actually, I have two opponents on the Democratic side, Jerry Ionisi and Nili Rozic. Bill Garofel is running on the conservative line. Nili Rozic is actively campaigning, and I do hear her speak, and not many people have known about her, and it was kind of a mystery. I mean, I must say, I also was not well known in general Queens area, but after hearing her speak, I got to piece together what she's about, and this is how we contrast. So I'll give you basic issues. Let's say we'll start education. I'm for vouchers. I'm for the private sector developing and creating programs such as Carpe Diem in Arizona that brings out the excellence and new ideas in education. They're working with computers. Kids are working at their own pace, and they're showing excellent results. The idea is that private education comes out with a quality product and for less. Even charter schools do better than public schools, and private schools are known to do better than public schools. And when you compare the price of $18,000 per pupil that New York State pays versus, let's say, for the Archdiocese, they charge $4,000 for elementary and $7,000 for high school. So I am for vouchers and tax credits. My opponent, Nili Rozic, wants to throw more money into education. That's her solution. That's the liberal idea. I'm for vocational training because I think that college is in a bubble right now. There are too many college graduates that come away with their degree and they're not being rewarded. 50% of college graduates were not able to find work commensurate with their degree this year. And the debt is up to $1 trillion, student debt. They average $26,000 per student, and they're having massive problems paying this back. Now the administration, President Obama is talking about pardoning debt. These are extraordinary times. Perhaps that is somewhat of a solution. After all, they shouldn't be worse off than people who declare bankruptcy. And actually, they are worse off because everybody is allowed to declare bankruptcy, but students can never write off their student debt. In any case, vocational training brings reality into the picture. I spoke to an educator who said that when they started doing away with vocational training in the public schools, that diminished the level of the whole school experience. Because let's be real about it, not everybody is on an academic track. So some people are better suited for certain things, and now we have there are very technical and specialized things that people can take up, and they pay quite well. Things in healthcare and manufacturing. that's where we should go. And then we have, I believe in character development education, because society is suffering from a lack of religious influence. And we see the results in Albany and Washington with corruption. It's so pervasive. Now, it's not something that we can fix for tomorrow, but if we institute in the young generation character development, we will sow the seeds of proper citizenship and responsible society, a responsible society functioning in the future. It's brought up in questions about Albany, transparency. Yes, there should be transparency in government for sure, but the main thing is that the electorate should know who they're voting in. There should be more participation when it comes to finding out about candidates, vetting them, and the point is that when candidates run when candidates run for office, we should know that we're putting in quality people with character. So that is, yes, transparency. We need to see what's going on, certainly when it comes to audits and showing what government programs are about. That is totally necessary, but to a certain extent it comes down to relying on the character of people. So that's where character really plays a big role. Now, also when it comes to education, the U of T is very powerful, and they are very resistant to change. They are very powerful politically, and when it comes to tenure, we have to recognize that the tenure is not always the answer. Actually, it's not the answer at all. And when my opponent was asked about what she thinks of tenure, she referred to her mother being a U of T member. That's not an answer. The fact that her family benefited from tenure, that is not an answer, because everybody has to be responsible and for what they do, and the performance always has to be under scrutiny. Okay, so that's as far as education. As far as small business, Republicans or responsible people believe that at this time small business shouldn't be stressed. I'm also for them raise a minimum wage, but it has to be determined for whom. Small business with a certain number of employees will not be able to shoulder that burden. Bigger companies with a higher number of employees would be able to. So it cannot be applied indiscriminately. Also, my opponent believes in government mandating sick time, sick leave, and vacation time. That's also something that small business cannot handle right now. So everything has to be looked at with the current reality. We already have shuttered stores in our neighborhoods, in our community. We shouldn't push more business out. And small business is affected by the fines, by the sanitation department. They're socked with $1,000 fines because some paper blows in front of their store. And even these restaurant ratings can be overly punitive and heavy-handed. So that's where we differ. Okay, but and my opponent also says that you should give tax credits for small business. The question is, where do you do where do you do spending cuts to make up for the tax credits? There has to be a balance. Now, when it comes to energy, when it comes to energy, Republicans, we don't want to politicize the idea of fracking. Fracking is mining energy. It's no different than oil or coal. There are risks associated with oil and with coal. Obviously, mines can collapse. With oil, there can be a well that goes out of control, such as BP. And I go according to legitimate sources. The GEIS report, which is a general environmental impact statement by the DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation. And my opponent, for instance, recommends Gasland. That's an activist film with not credited as being legitimate. And she talks about sinks on fire. That's been discredited because we know that when people dig wells, there is methane mixed in with the water. That's why they have pipes that siphon off methane. That's actually a routine thing, that they have pipes that siphon off the methane to take it out of the water. And there were even shenanigans with that the EPA was involved in, not realizing that they were duped. Somebody disconnected, somebody siphoned the pipe that was supposed to take the methane away from the water. They actually hooked it into the water line, and that was a scandal. How they came up with fire in the water, or gas in the water, and how you can light the fire, light the water on fire. But even without a scandal, there are situations where it naturally occurs, and that has been known to be discredited and not to be the fault of fracking. So when they talk about, okay, so Gasland, for instance, is a film that collects accidents from different places. It's as if you made a film about the accidents that occur on the highway, and you showed accident after accident. You went to an auto yard, or somewhere where they sell wrecked cars, and you said, okay, here is the result of auto accidents. So in every endeavor in life, there are risks. To just go and compile all the failures is not a responsible reporting. They also talk about all the chemicals that are applied to fracking. If you went into any grocery store and you counted up all the chemicals on the shelf, these are chemicals that are going into our environment. I'm sure you could come up with hundreds of chemicals. So to say that there are hundreds of chemicals involved in fracking is saying nothing, because it'll be the same thing as what you find in a grocery store. So the basic idea is not to and by the way, I looked into Tony Avella said that the Europeans are banning fracking. That is not what I saw. I saw that there are movements, activist movements, to put a moratorium on it, and France, strangely enough, because they are so into nuclear power, they do have a ban on fracking, and the Czech Republic and Romania have a moratorium on fracking, but that doesn't reflect all of Europe. So that also is exaggeration and propaganda. So the basic question with fracking is there a way to do it right? And there is a way to do it right, because all the experts, practically all the scientific experts on the subject say that there is one, but there is an environmental push against it the same way how in the late 70s there was a push against nuclear power. I'm old enough to know that, and there are others. And strangely enough, progressive France is all about nuclear power. So we see how the trends can change, and the reason we've been studying fracking for 4 years, we've been doing it for 50 years, but the reason we're studying for 4 years is because the environmentalists push so hard, and the politicians are afraid to proceed. Now, I'm not giving the green light. Obviously, right now it's up to the commissioner, the New York State Health Commissioner. He's going to determine from the findings of the JUICE report how it affects populations. But the bottom line is that it is a legitimate mining procedure. You put these pipes with sealed casings in way down into the ground, 15,000 feet, and the gas comes up in that well, that piping, and the only way that you contaminate the groundwater is through carelessness. It's not that it's coming through the pipe. It's not that there's an inherent flaw in the technology. So in that way, it's no different than any other technology where human error causes something to malfunction. That's what happened with BP. I mean, it's like saying to the oil companies, well, and by the way, President Barack Obama did try to say this. What I'm about to say is, well, because there are accidents in oil, let's shut the whole thing down. Well, he kind of did that with BP. He did a moratorium, which a federal judge declared unlawful. He shut down the Gulf Coast for 6 months, and that put a lot of operations out of commission. So the idea is not to act hysterically, and not to act with a political agenda. It's just like any other mining procedure. When it comes to energy, my opponent, after recommending Gasland as a source to find out about the industry, she says that she's going to roll up her sleeves and do everything she can for solar and wind power. Well, people have been trying that for 100 years. Germany is at the forefront of green power. They're putting up solar panels wherever they can, but it still doesn't amount to more than 1% of all their energy needs. So there's no question that solar panels, wind power can be used on a small scale, but we're still dependent on the major sources of fossil fuel. The idea is to do them responsibly and correctly. But to just pretend that we can just go to green power, wind and solar, that's not going to do it. Okay, so now let's talk about spending. Spending, there's no question that well, part of my platform is reducing spending in education, because as I said, New York State spends $18,000 per pupil, and that would be a great way of cutting spending. By letting the private sector take over education, you give people vouchers, and they'd love to take it out of the system. Aside from that idea, well, otherwise you can have audits, whether it's on the MTA or Medicaid or whatever it is. But my opponent, for instance, talks about having mobile offices with staff that would be trained in translations of people's native languages. That's going way beyond the call of duty, to the detriment of the taxpayer. If my opponent wants a mobile office, then every assemblyman should have a mobile office. And that we're not running a 911 or a 311. The Assembly is a legislative body. So it's not that people have to know, gee, it's she also talks about a 24-hour hotline. So they're going to call up 3 o'clock in the morning asking about what the legislation was. That's a bit far-fetched. The idea is that we have a structure. It's not even a city department, the Assembly. It's a State Department. So, so that's totally unrealistic. And her great claim over here is that she wants to go to Albany and demand the fair share of funding for northeastern Queens. That we're not going to stand in line anymore. So in other words, it's her claim to fame is that she's going to have her hand out with attitude, like, okay, it's now our turn. Give us money. So it's great to be demanding, but the point is we can't solve things with getting more money. If there's truly an inequity about northeastern Queens not getting its fair share, that's very legitimate. But just to have that angle on it is not a legitimate approach. Okay, so she also talks about senior centers, getting more money for women's health, which again, if I don't see that either of those as really critical issues. If by all means, if there are senior centers that are drastically short of funds, women's health, I don't see why it needs to be apart from men's health. I don't know that breast cancer, for instance, doesn't get as much funding as prostate. So to conclude, the idea is that we have to work on fiscal responsibility, empowering small business, and empowering people to have good choices in education, where it's cheaper and it's more qualitative, and not to keep spending money to solve these different problems. It's not about gender politics. It's not about group against group. It's about seeing fairness for all. That's what my candidacy is about. And again, I want to thank Palermo Pizzeria for having us, and they're in Jericho Turnpike at 249th Street. It's very much appreciated, and thank you very much.
I'm going to keep it rolling. Let me just ask you some questions that are like just three sentence at most, just short Q&A. So your stance on underwater fracking is the short answer. What's your stance on fracking?
Short answer is we definitely have to wait for the health commissioner's report, but chances are that if things are done responsibly, as in anything else, air travel, auto travel, manufacturing, of course, it has to be done responsibly. It will be shown that it's a legitimate energy mining procedure.
Very good. Some of the major things you're fighting for with your candidacy, I know education. So yeah, what are some of your strong points with your candidacy? What are some of the biggest changes?
Education, and that divides into a number of subjects. Vouchers and tax credits to get it away from the public school system. If the public school system wants to compete, by all means, but there should be competition in the private sector. People want to send their kids to parochial school, private school, religious school. The government would be giving people vouchers, and they could they could send their kids wherever they want, and that would give private sectors the opportunity to compete in the marketplace of education. And then, as I said, vocational training is very important because we're on the wrong track. Not everybody should be on the academic track. It's very important now in these times where there are vastly needed skills for people to fill the jobs that are already open, that are already listed. There are 3.5 million jobs nationally that Americans are not able to fill due to lack of specialized training. And then really, as I said before, character development education is critically needed, because every other day you read about another scandal in Albany or in Washington. The schools have major problems with kids, with lack of discipline. Parents have major problems with their kids. You know, it's not just about discipline, it's about kids being fulfilled. They shouldn't have to run towards drugs and sex and social media to the point of addiction. There has to be a balance put back into society, and it starts from each person. If they had more confidence in themselves, if they were more giving to each other, more considerate towards each other, more respectful, they would live a much happier lives. This is what religion brought to society. And when secularized society, when you take out religion, it leaves a void, and we have to come in and fill it with what religion taught us to begin with about character.
Two more quick questions. How do you feel about raising minimum wage? Do you think that
minimum
companies should
absolutely. In the 70s, the minimum wage was a living wage. It's no longer a living wage, especially in New York City. So yes, actually now the only reason that people can get along with minimum wage is because society as a whole is subsidizing them, because they automatically fall onto government subsidies. That should not be. But yes, in these times, as we're pulling ourselves together, small companies should not bear that burden, and bigger companies should. I was born in Washington, D.C. I came here when I was 15 to go to religious school. I went to seminary after that. I attended some college, but then I wanted to go to work, and I took up bookkeeping that the city offered. I took advantage of, like what we're talking about, vocational training. I benefited from that. So, and then I worked as a bookkeeper for a number of years, and then after taking a test for the post office, I was called. I was with the post office for 25 years, and I'm a retired postal worker. I also invested in real estate at the same time. Since 1989, I renovated 6 properties, which I'm very proud of, because that is enhancing neighborhoods. So along with what I learned being a civil service worker for 25 years, my involvement with real estate, and my personal curiosity about politics, this is what I'm bringing to my candidacy, along with the idea that for the last few years I was inactive in a number of political clubs and petitioning and promoting other candidates. Palermo Pizzeria, 249 Jericho. And you were saying that this is small business. Do you feel that you're being taken care of? That you're being allowed to function as a business, or you feel that you're being squeezed and pushed?
We're squeezed, we're pushed. The problem is that gas goes up. Every time gas goes up, products go up. The products have gone up 25%. Right? So that means if you made $2,000 in gross, you bought $2,000 worth of merchandise, right? From last year to now, it costs you 25% more. Right. The problem is you can't pass that along, because the customers that come in a working class area, right, they can't afford. So the prices are going down, but the cost of business is going up.
Right.
So what they've created is working poor people.
Right.
We say working poor people. You can make 75, 80,000, 100,000 a year, right? What's poverty line? 20,000 a year? Poverty line, 20,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
We are working poor people.
That's right.
We're not business owners anymore.
So you're affected by the utility bills, by heating bills.
gas prices,
commodity prices, flour,
everything.
Right.
I mean, cheese a year ago was $2 a pound. Now it's $2.95 a pound.
Right.
That's a 50% increase
Right.
in 1 year.
And do you feel that the government is looking out for you, trying to make it easier, or do you feel a resistance that the government is pushing on you?
The problem with government is that the Republicans, they think that by giving to the higher end, it's going to trickle down, and the Democrats give too much to the poor people, and not enough to people
and the middle class are left out in the cold.
Yeah, because you see, we're not really middle class. We are the big gap between the middle class and the above poor people.
Right.
We're working poor.
Right.
A guy who goes out and makes $75,000, $80,000 a year, right? Lives on $20,000. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, if you made $75,000 a year, you were considered lower middle class, almost middle class. You could have sent a kid to college, you could have worked, you could have owned a house, you could own a car. Now you make $75,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year. You take away $20,000, $25,000 for mortgage, $25,000 either mortgage or rent, whatever it is, it's the same thing, right? Take out another $15,000 to buy food and to live, another $7,000, $8,000 for a car.
Right. So now you're working poor, in other words. Right.
Yeah, we're above. We're not poor.
Right. Right.
We're not poor.
Yeah, right.
But the gap is getting wider and wider.
So actually, in two ways the government could improve this, could alleviate this. Number one, I believe that the wealthy should bear more responsibility, more tax burden.
Okay. This is what the problem.
And also, they have to stop bleeding the middle class with taxes that go towards waste.
Let me explain to you. Rich people, okay, like they say in the papers, the top 2%, right, or 5%, or 10%, or 15%.
Right.
Yes, they do pay more tax, right?
Yeah, but they can even pay more because in Clinton's time they.
But listen to me. If you paid even, let's say, 20%, 25% on $1 million income, right? You're still going home with $700,000.
Absolutely.
A guy that makes $45,000 and he pays 20%, 25%, it's not the same thing.
Or even 15%. Right?
Even 15%.
That's right.
If you're making $40,000, you're paying 15%, you're left with what, 38, 30, 32,
right.
35? Average rent is $1,500.
Right.
So what are you left with? That's $18,000, even if you pay rent, even if you don't own a house.
Right.
Okay? So you're living on $15,000 a year.
Right.
One person. If you got a family, that's two people. That's $30,000. If you got a family and kids, you're already down. You're not poor, but you're not rich. Where are you?
Right.
You're not middle class.
So there is, and actually the rich have gotten very much richer. The disparity between the rich and the poor is really, really wide.
The rich and the poor, it's always going to be there. You can't have rich people unless you have poor people.
Actually, the middle class is disappearing because
there is no more middle class.
There is no more middle class. So there's more poor and there's more rich.
Right.
That's the way society is split
and
up.
The gap is you can't make that jump no more. See, years ago, you used to work and there was a goal. You work harder, you worked 10 days a week, you worked 14 hours a day, there was a goal. You would one day say, you know, I could send my kid to college. I could send him to do this.
Right.
College used to be $15,000 a year, a good college.
Right.
Now it's $30,000.
Right.
How do you expect to send your kid to a decent college?
Right. That's a whole other issue about tuition inflation.
Tuition inflation. The problem is the economics of this country. They've destroyed us because they've destroyed not the just the middle class, the guy that's making $150,000, $200,000 a year. Okay, yeah, that gap is smaller. But what happens is the gap that's between the guy that's making $60,000 and $100,000. I mean, how many people out there making $60,000 a year? You need two incomes to make that.
Right.
And if you break it down, you are just above poverty line.
Right.
You have to go apply for food stamps.
Right. So there's more poor, there's more rich, and the middle class vanished, and that's what we have to build up again. Is the middle class.
You have to give money the value of money again.
Right.
They've devaluated money so much.
That's right, because we borrow so much, so they have to devalue it.
They devaluate the money so much because before we used to make more money when we were making $30,000 a year Now you're making 75 and you're living on 20.
Absolutely. Right.
It's the economy of this country.
What's this?
They've destroyed. They've destroyed people like us that, with the housing. I mean, years ago you used to work 10 years, 15 years. The average home would double in value. They did the same thing that happens in 30 years in 3 years.
Absolutely. That was a housing
Right.
bubble. That was a housing
Now,
bubble.
they gave money to all these banks, right? Now the banks are
It
making
was
it so
monopoly
hard.
money. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were underwriting mortgages that they had no business doing, and it was with fake money, with
But
monopoly
see,
money.
but it
And
wasn't just-
that's what destroyed the whole housing
Right,
market.
but it wasn't just Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Because you see, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, from my understanding, is they are in some way they have to take these mortgages. In other words, in their product, the idea for Fannie Mac and Fannie Mae is to help the guy that's in between, the guy that's okay. You're not a AAA, but you're not a C. You're a double A. You're a double A plus.
Actually, what you're saying is very significant because it was the Affordable Home Act or something like that.
No,
that,
see, it wasn't-
that was mandated in Clinton's time that made the banks take on mortgages that they really had no
But
business
you see,
taking on.
that's the problem. You see, you said the key word, affordable.
Right. It wasn't affordable.
It wasn't affordable.
Right.
You could have bought a shack. You could have bought a shack, right, for $300,000. The next day, refinance it, and an appraiser would come without you. They would take a picture from someplace else and say this thing is worth $500,000.
Absolutely.
And the banks, you know why the banks were giving the money? Not because you could afford to pay, because it was another loan. I mean, the bank lawyer got paid, the appraiser got paid, whoever it is there, the city got money because there was another mortgage, origination fee, taxes for the city, taxes for the government. Everybody got paid. Everybody got a piece of the action.
On this bogus appraisal.
Of course.
Right.
That's why they were flipping houses like crazy.
Right.
They didn't care because they knew that one day when this bubble busted, they weren't going to pick up the pieces. The government, they knew that this was too big.
Well, and the government and the government was underwriting these loans.
Right. Because
So
they
the
were putting them all together and going up to the government and saying, hey, you told us to help these people. We're helping them. Here's another 100,000 loans. What do you want from us? Right? And they were sending them overseas. And the other thing, you see, what's even worse, okay, that a lot of these people that bought these houses, a good 80% would have been able to afford the houses. Okay? Even though they were not AAA credit, they would have done anything to, because anybody that gets to own a house would have worked 10 times harder than somebody who's paying rent to keep their house. But what they did was, this is the biggest scam out of all of them, out of everything, the biggest scam. They would come to you and say, okay, 500,000, 5% down, at a 3% interest rate. So they tell you, okay, you're paying 3%, it's $2,200, $2,400. And I know plenty of people that did it. They would get 2 families, 3 families living in a house. Say, listen, we're paying $1,000 in rent. We could get 2 families together. Instead of paying $2,000 in rent, we'll pay $2,500 in a mortgage, but we own the house. And they were able to do it. Besides the scammers, right? But what they did, they gave them for 1 year, a year and a half, 2 years. And then it adjusted. Now, this mortgage went from $2,000, $2,500, to $3,500.
Right.
They couldn't afford to pay no more. That was the biggest scam. See, if they would have left the rates low and fixed, yes, the average 10% goes bankrupt. They know that. They know what the percentage is. They know what it is. It could have been maybe another 10%, another 15%. Not 50%. And the government had no choice to give these banks all this money. And the banks, see, now they're so tight. Now they're starting to charge fees for everything. You go on a stupid credit card, right? If sometimes at American Express they charge you a fee. For $1.30, Overdraft, $1.30 or 75 cents. Overdraft. You know how much they charge you? $35.
Yeah, right. $30. Right.
It used to be $5.
Right.
So, God forbid you get an overdraft for 35 cents or 75 cents. It costs you $35.
Absolutely.
Where do all this money's going?
Right.
It's going to the banks.
Yeah.
But they're not lending money. See, years ago there was a system. You went to the bank, you had to put 25% down, 30% down. Okay? Even if you didn't have
Then they went
credit.
to 0% down. 100% finance.
Right. And they should make them pay for it.
Yeah.
They should make them pay for it.